Good morning, everybody. Hello. Happy Saturday. I am talking to you today from the lovely, maybe not so sunny Cotswolds. You might be able to see in the background over my shoulder a nice green field and some Cotswold stone. Very nice here. A little bit foggy, but it is January, so we'll go with that. Hope you're all right. It's the first live since just before Christmas, actually. So I hope everybody had a great Christmas and a new year. Welcome back. I am back with my lives and talking to you about all things to do with Celebrants. So today is a live Q&A. I've been taking your questions over the last week or so, and I've got a few other questions that I regularly get asked, so I'm going to run through those for you and give you some answers. If you're watching live, please feel free to pop any questions in the comments that you might have, and I will answer them as we go along. Even if you're watching on a replay, then please also just drop your questions in the comments if you have any, and I will respond to you and answer. Okay, so without further ado, let's crack on. So the first question I've got, which is actually a really good place to start, is what does a celebrant do? So if you don't know much about celebrants, that's a perfectly legitimate question, and sometimes it can be a bit confusing because you have vicars and priests and those people who will be officiating religious ceremonies. You have registrars who act on behalf of your local authority to carry out civil ceremonies at licensed venues, so that's for weddings in particular. You have other groups of celebrants who are affiliated to particular belief systems or particular organisations, the humanists, for example, and then there are independent celebrants, and that's the category that I fall into. So as an independent celebrant, I can conduct a ceremony for you, whether it be a wedding celebration or civil partnership celebration, a celebration of life when someone has passed away, a naming ceremony for your child, a renewal of vows, commitment ceremony. I also offer personally acknowledgement of loss ceremonies, which is all to do with early pregnancy loss. So there's lots of different things and lots of different events that you could choose in life to celebrate, and a celebrant can be there to help you create a wonderful, beautiful ceremony, create the content for you and deliver that content on the day in a really beautiful way. So that's really essentially what a celebrant does. A celebrant will work with you to create your ceremony, to celebrate your life event, and then deliver that on the day for you. So that's it in a nutshell. So my second question is, what do celebrants wear? And again, that's a really good question, because I think sometimes there's a perception, just like with religious ministers who tend usually to wear ceremonial robes, that actually celebrants may wear the same kind of thing. I don't. There's no sort of official uniform or anything like that for celebrants, and I don't use any particular robes or uniform. So I will normally be dressed smartly, because I always like to present myself in a smart and professional way, and at the end of the day, as your celebrant, I'm performing a professional service for you. So you know, I might be, for a wedding, for example, in a typical kind of dress and a jacket or something that you might expect a wedding guest to wear. For any other ceremony, you know, I will be dressed appropriately for the location and the weather, and whilst also still maintaining a smart and professional appearance. You know, if you were having a ceremony that had a particular theme and you particularly wanted me to wear something like a particular colour or some particular I'm thinking corsage or brooch or some kind of something on my on my person, then that's a possibility, and we can talk about that, absolutely. But in terms of generally what celebrants wear, there is no sort of set uniform or robes or anything like that. We come along as we are. So the next question is from a bride who says, I'm getting married to my partner next year. Do I still need a registrar if I have a celebrant ceremony? So in terms of marriage and getting married, the law in this country, in England and Wales in fact, means that to have a legal marriage that must be performed in a licensed venue by a registrar. But what I would say about that is that actually by having a celebrant, you're not restricting yourself to a licensed venue. You can have any location that you want. And actually the way I tend to think about it, and a couple of people have spoken to me about it, is if you think about when somebody has a baby, you give birth and that's the event, you're giving birth to your baby, and then afterwards you go along to your registrar and you legally register the birth of that baby. So in the very same way, or very similar way, you can have your celebrant-led marriage or wedding celebration ceremony, and to all intents and purposes, to everybody else who will be there, that is your wedding, that is your wedding day. And then afterwards, or even before that, you can pop along to your local register office really quickly, easily and cheaply, do the legal bit in about 5 minutes. You can do it in your jeans and t-shirt if you want, and essentially you're then registering your marriage after you've had the big celebration ceremony. So the short answer to the question is, do you still need a registrar? Yes, as we currently speak, the law means that you do still need a registrar, but that can be done and accommodated and facilitated really easily around having a celebrant ceremony. So I hope that answers that one. I've had another question from, again, another bride who says, I've heard of hand fasting and hand tying, but open to suggestions of what else I could include in my ceremony. What do you recommend? So hand fasting and hand tying are very similar, if not really the same thing. And if you've not heard of hand fasting before, that's where, as a couple, you have your hands and wrists bound together with ribbon or cord or any other material that you might choose to have. And that's obviously symbolising your union, and that your bond, you're tying together as a bond, and that bond is unbreakable. So it's a really lovely thing for wedding ceremonies. It's lovely for any couple ceremony, commitment, renewal of vows, and that can be done so you incorporate all of your guests into that. There is a way of incorporating everybody into that action of hand tying, or it could just be something that is literally just about you and your partner binding your hands with your celebrant doing that for you, and that can be, they're both equally great options. In terms of what would I recommend and any suggestions for alternatives, there are loads and loads of alternatives that you could have. There's lots of different, what we call symbolic actions that you can choose to do. The very traditional example of a symbolic action is in a wedding ceremony, exchange of rings. That is a symbolic action. Obviously, hand fasting is a symbolic action, and there are lots and lots of other things. And if you go to my blog or you go back and look at some of my previous videos, you'll see me talking quite a bit about symbolic actions and what they are, and some different examples of them. And indeed, if you've signed up to my newsletter, you will have seen in the past me talking about different symbolic actions throughout that. So if you want to get some tips and advice on that, do sign up to the newsletter. Just go to the website and sign up. And you'll get some suggestions, but there's lots you can do. Somebody else has asked, what is a naming ceremony and what are they for? So a naming ceremony, I think traditionally people associate that with when you've had a baby, but it can be for a child of any age, or indeed even an adult. Potentially. So the idea of a naming ceremony is that it's an alternative to a religious ceremony, and the crux of a religious ceremony is usually about welcoming that child into the religious community there. A naming ceremony is more about welcoming your child into your family, your extended family, and maybe your wider community. So there can be elements of religion in a naming ceremony. That's absolutely fine, but it is an alternative to a purely religious service, such as a christening, for example. A naming ceremony, again, you've got the choice of locations. You can have that ceremony in your back garden. You could have it in your local village hall. Anywhere that you wanted, you could have it. If you live on a farm and you want it in the middle of the farmyard, absolutely fine, we can do that. So naming ceremony is all about welcoming your child into your family, and it could be that you have you've just had a new baby, but you have some slightly older children, and you want to include all of them into that naming ceremony because maybe you didn't have christenings or ceremonies for your older children. That can also be accommodated. So it doesn't necessarily have to be just about one child. It can incorporate wider children, wider family members. And I referenced, maybe it could be appropriate for an adult as well. It could be that in life you've been through some particular changes in your lifestyle or your circumstances, and you want to have a ceremony to recognise. Maybe you've never had something like a naming ceremony. Maybe you've changed your name for whatever reason, whether it's your first name or your second name, and you want to have a ceremony to actually really cement and mark that moment and that change, and going forward you are a new person. So a naming ceremony could work in that instance as well. What else have I got? So the next question was actually, I want to have a naming ceremony in my garden, is that possible? So I've just covered that. Yes, it absolutely is possible. You can have it anywhere you like. I would just say, in terms of location, whenever as a celebrant, whenever someone's telling me about the location of their ceremony, I would always do my sort of health and safety sort of assessments myself to make sure that the location that's being proposed is adequate for having guests there, is going to be safe for everybody. So I would talk to you about that as well as we went along in our process. And so the last question that I have got today is, what is the process for you to create a ceremony? So what's the process that we would go through if I was working with you as your celebrant? So the first thing to do would be to have that very first initial chat, for you to make sure that you're happy that I'm the right person for you and the right celebrant for you, and for me to just get some sort of fairly basic details about if you've thought about a date or not, whether you've thought about the location of where you want your ceremony, how many people roughly you might be intending on inviting, and if you've got any sort of initial sort of thoughts about what you want out of your ceremony, or how it's going to look on the day. If you don't know any of that, that's absolutely fine. But if you do, great, and I'll take all of that information and run with it. But if it's not something that you've even thought about yet, don't feel that you have to know all of that before you even make an inquiry. You can make an inquiry at the very beginning when you're just sort of starting to think about things, and I can support you and help you with processing, and going through those details. Once we've had that initial chat, and you're happy that you want to go forward with me, then I would be having another meeting with you, and possibly your partner if it's a couple ceremony or something that involves you, or possibly some wider family members, so that I can start to get to know you, start to get to know the people who are at the centre of the ceremony. So whether that's you and a partner, whether it's your child, etc., then I would be really talking to you about what you want to be included in the ceremony, for me to get to know you, to get some background details about you and your story as individuals, as a couple, so that I can create a ceremony in wording that is really fitting and bespoke to you. And I would also be talking to you about symbolic action. So is there anything else that you want to include in your ceremony? And again, if you've got no idea at all what kind of actions you would want in your ceremony, that's absolutely fine. I can help and guide you, and we can discuss that, not an issue. But again, if you've got, you know, very clear ideas about what you want, or, you know, you've heard about a certain thing and think you want that but you're not sure, absolutely, let's have a discussion about it, let's have a chat, and whatever you want to do, I will help and support you to achieve it. So that would be the second meeting, and then I would then go away to create that ceremony for you. You would be able to see a copy of that ceremony and the wording and the actions, so that you can understand what's going to happen on the day, and of course be happy that the words that I'm going to say are a true reflection of who you are and what you want. So there would be that sort of discussion around the script and around what the ceremony is going to look like on the day. And then on the day, I will turn up and deliver that ceremony for you, you know, in a loving and trusting way. And the most beautiful ceremonies are those that have, you know, really been tailor-made for the people at the centre of them, and that's absolutely my mission, is to create a, you know, a beautiful and authentic experience for you. And then after the ceremony, obviously you've had the big celebration, that's all great, and I will be getting in contact with you just to follow up and see if everything went okay, if you're happy with everything, and I would give you a souvenir copy of your script as well, so you've always got that keepsake afterwards, to have that memory with you. Okay, so they're all my questions that I had for today. If you want to know any more about what I do, just head over to the website, theauthenticCelebrant.co.uk. If you want to look at any past videos, like I mentioned before, about symbolic actions, and there's lots of other information there as well, just go over to Facebook and have a look at the page. There's lots of videos on there. I've also got a blog which you can sign up to, that I blog fairly regularly on different topics related to ceremonies. So do sign up to that so you don't miss an instalment. And of course you can follow me on Instagram and Facebook. I'm the Authentic Celebrant. Okay, well, it was nice to talk to you today, and I'm going off to enjoy a foggy Cotswolds, and I will see you next time. Bye.